Why do so many of us feel the need to buy the new iPhone year after year? After all, don't they all serve us the same purpose? Even if we hear something about the improved camera quality, we're not likely to actually want the new phone. After all, the old one serves us just fine. If it wasn't for the advertising and the changes in popular opinion, would we be making the same decisions that we are today? The pitfalls of the capitalist system are apparent to many of us, especially on a societal level. Capitalism is driven by the need for constant growth, which leads to constant production and overproduction of goods, not only leading to a waste of resources, but pollution of our environment through factories and environmental damage. Capitalism also causes rising inequalities. We can see that the exploitation of workers in income and wealth causes the rich to get richer, while the poor only get poorer. But to us, on an individual level, there are also harms to capitalism. After all, the consumption of goods leads to goods wearing out both physically and psychologically, where we want the new iPhone year after year because the old one doesn't work the same anymore, but also because of our personal needs to always want the better quality or always want the better product. So we may ask ourselves, if there are so many limitations to the system, why is consumerism still around? Well, consumerism hasn't always been seen as a bad thing. Historically, especially after the Second World War, when the ideology really started to develop, consumerism was seen as an especially positive thing. After a period of economic depression and low morale encouraged conservative economic spending, the way consumption was allowed to flourish in people, and people were encouraged through government policies, but also because of the gains made in the war and wartime production, to buy more goods. This also contributed to societal issues being solved. For example, middle-class women were now able to gain new freedoms in making purchasing decisions for their household, whereas previously they weren't able to do that. They would now make decisions on how the household would operate on an economical level. But also developments like regional shopping malls helped the development of consumption by tying consumerist ideology to our value of community, while people would now be able to meet in a social place while engaging in consumption. And really, what was very prevalent in this period, especially in Western economies like the USA, that their American identity was now tied to consumption. It was the patriotism of being an American was tied to the freedom of buying. Not just the freedom of buying American goods, but the freedom of making choices to buy whatever you want. And this also encouraged the ideology of consumerism because on an individual level, decisions weren't about wealth or political power, they were about your individual rational desires and what you wanted to achieve in life. And this allowed for consumerism to flourish as people could be thinking about themselves while allowing for the system to grow. So considering how I've shown the positives and the negatives of capitalism, how do we move forward? Well, really capitalism thrives because we have our individual self-interest and our individual needs fulfilled in the market system, where we can buy whatever we want to fulfill our wants and needs. And the reason that we buy the new iPhone every year is because we have a want and a need for it, but also because we are encouraged to by the consumerist ideology that really traps us in these kind of self-defeating patterns of constantly wanting and buying new things. So if individual rational self-interest is the driving force behind excessive consumption, then critiques of capitalism and of consumerism shouldn't focus on assessing the morality of the situation, but rather how the system traps us in these self-defeating patterns and how it leads to our natural preferences being distorted. So overall, we should rethink how capitalism relates in both the negative and the positive aspects and the nuances of this issue. And if we are able to consolidate our need for individual choice and rational self-interest with the issues that the system causes, then we can begin to think of new, better alternatives. Thank you.